Social media does not work unless you understand this. Episode 143. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I wanted to jump into another direction, and that is talking about social media, specifically how you can leverage social media in your marketing efforts of your firm. Now, social media has many different uses, many different ways that it can be used. And I want to preempt this conversation to be that I'm specifically talking about the use of social media when it comes to trying to build relationships and connections with people who may become a target, may become a potential client, or may be a potential referral source for you. There are other uses of social media, like consistent content creation, building an audience of people who are tuning in to what you have to say, what you have to share. And that's a whole nother strategy, and I'm not covering that in this episode. So essentially, if we look at a law firm in general, the best leads, the highest quality leads come from the referrals, come from past clients, family, friends, somebody who knows you, trusts you enough to make an introduction to somebody else. And the challenge that we have is that our world of people who can refer to us is small. And if we can continually expand that world, if we can continue to grow how many people can refer to us, essentially what we will do is we will be, over time, growing the pipeline of referrals that are going to be coming into the practice. So there's a way to do this using social media, and that's really what I wanted to talk about on this episode. I wanted to just go through some of the concepts, some of the things that you need to understand about human nature, how social works, and then put it all together and to put something into action for yourself if you choose to use this method. So if we look at the social platform, I want to just start looking at what you experience as an end user when you're on social. If you post something on Facebook, for example, do you ever go back and check to see how many people liked the post, to see how many comments you're getting, to react or respond to the comments that are there? Most people don't just post on social for the sake of posting and then walk away and never look back. What would be the purpose of posting in that case? People post because they want the immediate feedback of knowing that there's somebody else out there that cares about what they have to say. And when somebody reacts, or even better, comments or shares the post, that's like the ultimate feedback that we can receive, or the ultimate acknowledgement that we can receive that we've posted something that is worth somebody else's attention. And that creates this adrenaline rush inside of us. It creates a good feeling, and we want more of that, which is why people are addicted to posting on social. However, the point that I'm trying to articulate or make here is that when somebody posts, providing feedback to them in the form of a like of some kind, a comment, which is even better, or a share, which is probably the best, although comment and share, depending on how they're done, can pay different dividends. But essentially, if you were to do that to somebody else, what you are doing is you are causing this positive feeling to them. And they're going to notice. They may not notice if you do it once, but they're going to notice if they see you constantly reacting, commenting, sharing the stuff that they are posting. So that's the first concept that I want you to just kind of tuck away for a moment. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And the next thing that we want to look at is how do you expand the network that you have? So if you think about it, how do you connect with somebody new on social? Well, you simply send them a connection request. In LinkedIn, it's a connection request. In Facebook, it's a friend request. In Instagram, it's a follow. Every platform is different, but essentially there is a process that you can follow where you can connect with anybody, or at least attempt to connect with anybody, and you don't necessarily even have to know them. So if you can come up with a way of finding the people that you want to establish relationships with, then you can send connection requests to all of them. So let's just use somebody who is a business lawyer. So you do business law. You help businesses with contract creation, managing their, making sure that they've got their ducks in a row from a human resources personnel hiring and firing angle, stuff like that. So my first recommendation would be to niche down, right? So once you have a niche that you focus on, you don't have to have a niche for this exercise, but it certainly makes it easier. You could go into, depending on the platform. So for example, on LinkedIn, you could go into LinkedIn and you can simply do a search, whether a regular search or a sales navigator search, for somebody in that particular vertical, somebody in that particular industry, within a certain mile radius of your office. For example, if you're not a virtual establishment, you need the client to be nearby. What other criteria can you put in there? You can put a lot of criteria in there. You could put in what their job title is or what their level of seniority is. You could put in there, let's see, I don't have the search in front of me, but you can look in there and see what the different criteria is to kind of narrow down and find that subset of people that you're looking for. And then you simply start trying to connect with them. Now, when you send out a connection request, here's where we're once again going to step into the shoes of the user experience. So now when you send out a connection request, you're invading somebody else. You're coming into their space and you're saying, hey, I would like to connect with you. Now, why should they want to connect with you? So now put yourself in those shoes. How do you filter connection requests when somebody reaches out to you? Now, some of you are like, well, I accept everybody. That's fine, but most people are not like that. So when we look at it, when somebody sends you a connection request, the first thing you do is you look and see, hey, do we have anybody in common? Do we have any friends in common? Do we have any connections in common? That's the first place we go to see, do I know this person, or is this a spam or garbage request? Now, if we do have connections in common, and sometimes we require more than one, right? Sometimes we require multiple connections in common for our filter system. But at the end of the day, if you have a connection in common, then you pass the first test. Now, what's the next test? So I'm just going to take a step back for a moment. When you're doing that search in LinkedIn, you can choose to only show people who are second-degree connections. First-degree connections are already connected with you, so you don't need to show them. And if you just do second-degree connections, you're going to avoid third-degree or no associated connections, and therefore you're going to increase the likelihood of people accepting your outreach. Now, when you reach out to somebody, let's see, do we cover all the criteria? No. So the first criteria is that second-degree connection. The next thing in the filtering process, now you just put those shoes on and think about, okay, when I receive a connection request, once I confirm that we have mutual connections and therefore this is not a spam request, what's the next thing that I do? Well, I try to figure out, why is this person trying to connect with me? So if there's a note with it that explains why they're trying to connect with you, then I get my answer and I make my decision. If there isn't such note, then I am going to start doing research. I'm going to check out their profile. I'm going to look to see where they work. I'm going to look at see what they're posting about. And I'm going to make a determination based on what I find whether or not to move forward and accept that connection. So there's a few things that we see when we start to look at this. We start to put ourselves in the recipient's shoes. What are some of the things that they're doing? They're looking for a reason. So if they're looking for a reason, why not give them a reason? So when you're sending out connection requests, why not put a note with it to explain why you're trying to connect with them? In other words, I am trying to connect with you because I am trying to get to know all the people in this industry. That's just one example. There's many different things you can write, but that's one example. For example, when I do outreach, I often lead with, "Hi, I'm the host of the Profit with Law podcast and the Law Firm Growth Summit, and I'm looking to connect with success-driven, mission-driven law firm owners. And thanks in advance, Moshe." That's typically the note that I would send when I'm looking to connect with attorneys, law firm owners, attorneys. So when somebody receives that request and they see that's, they may not have heard the podcast, but they see that I'm a podcast host of a podcast that's clearly regarding law in some way, right? And they hear about this Law Firm Growth Summit, and they see that I am just requesting a connection because I'm trying to get to know attorneys, right? So that will probably pass the sniff test for a lot of people. Now, what's interesting is and I know that you might understand this, because sometimes when I do this initial connection request, I get a nasty message back, or it's not always nasty, but I get a message back often that says, "I'm not looking for marketing services." Now, what's funny is that I never indicate that I am selling marketing services. As a matter of fact, I'm not a marketing agency. We don't sell marketing services. So why would somebody assume that? Well, obviously, people who are trying to connect with lawyers often are marketers who are then just going to turn around and pitch to you. And who has time for pitches, and who wants to be pitched to, right? So that infuriates the recipient, especially if that's happening on a larger scale. So I learned that through my own market research, and I started to add into my message sequence that I send them. I started to add this disclaimer saying, "I'm not a marketer," so that I just remove that from the table. I take it away. And you want to kind of think that way. Like, what are they going to think when I send them this message? Their shields are going to go up. Their defense system is going to go up, and they're going to be hard to penetrate. In other words, they're going to be hard for me to establish the next step in this relationship if they are on guard. So I need to figure out what would cause them to be on guard, and therefore what do I need to do to prevent that from happening. So we talked about what it's like to interact with a post. We talked about doing outreach to increase your circle, increase your list of friends that you're connected with, your list of connections that you're connected with, and so on. So the next thing that I want to cover here is the final piece in the puzzle, and it's a big piece, and that is that people communicate in different channels. People communicate in multiple channels. Think of your own use of your smartphone, your own use of your computer. How many different ways do you communicate with people in the outside world? I'm going to throw some out there. You probably are doing phone calls. You probably are doing text messages. You probably are doing email. You probably are communicating on Facebook Messenger. Now, it might not be all of these, so you might say, "No, not me. I don't have Facebook." That's fine. I'm not referring to just all these things being in your totality, right? These are all possibilities. Facebook Messenger, Instagram direct message, LinkedIn messaging platform, WhatsApp. What else? What other ways can you communicate with people? So you start to look at all the varied channels of communication, all the different ways that we can communicate. And now we look and we say, okay, what is typically done? Typically, we connect with somebody on social and we try to communicate with them on social. We leave it there. We don't take it off of social. And what happens is that there's a lot of people who don't live in that messaging application. There's a lot of people who don't monitor that messaging application. So if it's unnatural for them to be communicating in there, they might eventually see your message. They might eventually reply to it, but it's not going to be at the top. It's not going to be something that that gets their attention and that gets response right away. So we want to look at or don't take off the table the fact that you have all these other options, all these other places that you can go to communicate with this prospective referral source or prospective client or prospective relationship. So when I do my outreach on LinkedIn, when I do my outreach on Facebook, and by the way, LinkedIn's the only one that has that search tool that you can search by industry, that you can search, it's pretty powerful as far as what you can find. On other platforms, you kind of need to do that more manually. In other words, you need to join groups that are for your target market and connect with people there, provide value in the group. People notice you, they reach out and try to connect with you. That's what you need to do in those platforms where the search mechanism is not as robust, and therefore you can't just run a search and go and connect to the people that show up in that search. So here's where we start to bring it all back together. So you want to expand your circle. You want to connect with people. And the purpose of that connection is to establish a relationship so that you can provide value to them and they can reciprocate with value to you. And hopefully that comes with a referral, a recommendation, and so on. So you reach out to somebody and you add a note when you reach out to them. So you explain to them why you're reaching out and trying to connect with them. And then you wait for them to accept the connection request. Once they accept the connection request, now here's where it's important to recognize that I have a lot of options in front of me. Number one, I can message them. I can send another message in their messenger, maybe even create a sequence of messages that go off based on a certain amount of time delay in between each one. But I can communicate within the messaging platform of the social media where we connected. So that's the first natural thing when somebody we handshake, we meet each other, and then the next accessible thing, the next thing that makes sense is to send a follow-up message. Hey, thanks for connecting. Now, you can do whatever you want with this message. I try to build value. I try to provide resources that would be beneficial to them. I like to do that and then subtly start to ask for a phone call and then get more direct with asking for a phone call as time progresses. So the other thing to recognize is, okay, we could send them a message on the messaging application, but we just said that there's multiple channels, right? We can call, we can email, we can go into other messaging applications on other platforms and message them there. And what's interesting is that you can measure the responsiveness that you're getting. So in other words, if you're sending messages in the messaging platform of the social media that you're on, and they are not responding, then that's indicative that they are not interested or they're not checking their messages, right? So it could be they're not checking their messages, but some of them show you where somebody checked their message. They show you it's red. So you can see that it was red, it was not responded to. Here's where the secret sauce is. Here's where, people make this mistake. They don't move any further. And that is, once you connect with them, you may have access to their email address. On LinkedIn, for sure, once you connect with somebody, you have access to their contact information. You can see their email address. You can see their phone number. But also, you can be smart about it. So you can go to the website of their company and you can try to find contact information there. You can find a phone number, and you can call the company, and you can ask for the email address of that person. You can say, hey, I was supposed to send Bob I want to send Bob an email. Would you mind sharing his email address with me so I can get this email sent out? And then usually you'll be able to get that information just from the front desk of the company that you're calling. So if you can't get it on social, you can get it manually that way. And then what I would do is I would send an email. Now, before you freak out that you're not allowed to send unsolicited emails, this is not sending emails through a automated email broadcast, email blast system. And this email is not unsolicited. They just accepted your connection request. So when you're sending them an email, you're saying, dear Bob, we just connected on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if you use the messaging application over there, so I wanted to drop you a note here as well. And then you could send the same message that you have in Messenger. The point is, or the purpose is just to show up in another place. And when it's different than what people are used to experiencing, they pay attention more. And that's it. That's all we're trying to do, is we're trying to get their attention. The entire goal, entire focus of this should be to get them on the phone so that you can have a conversation, you can hit it off, you can see if there's a way to develop a relationship further from that initial conversation, or if you spent time that was wasted. Now, don't forget, so we talked about sending email. Don't forget that you can also text message or call. Now, I wouldn't text message unless somebody gives you their cell phone number and says, here, you can text me. Definitely an unsolicited phone call is a good idea. And here's why. When somebody accepts your connection request, your name stands out for a split second, right? They'll remember your name if it came up again, their ears will perk up, but that won't last very long. And what we want to have happen is we want them to start to recognize your name, and that's why you send a message and you hopefully get a response. But if you don't, then you send an email, you hopefully get a response. But if you don't, then you call. And when you call and the front desk goes to put the call through and they say, hey, Moshe Amsel's on the phone for you, at that point, I already did a connection request. I received a message from you on Messenger. I received an email from you. Chances are I've just saw your name 3 or 4 times, and therefore I'm going to have recognition. I may not remember why I know the name, but I'll have recognition, and that's going to get you past the gatekeeper. It's going to get you past the front door and allow you to get into a conversation with that prospective lead, referral source, whatever it is that you're trying to create that relationship for. Now, here's where we go back full circle to the first thing that we talked about. Right at the beginning, we talked about how you can interact with somebody's posts on social and therefore give them that positive feedback. And this is the second level of secret sauce. So the first one was, hey, take it off of the platform and go to email, go to phone calls. The second one is start to show up in different places for that person that gives them a good feeling. Because what's going to happen is that if they don't respond to your initial outreach, they may not. The mistake that people make is they're like, oh, he's not interested in talking to me. He's not interested in responding to me. I'm just going to give up on this person. And the reality is that there's a lot of reasons why they may not have responded to you. And it may just be that you simply need to get their attention better. And you can do that by commenting on their posts, by liking their posts, by sharing their posts. So what you need to do is you need to keep this short list of people you're trying to establish a relationship with and literally go and check their profiles. Or if you're like on LinkedIn, the Sales Navigator tool has a way of tracking that for you. If you have an integrated CRM where you're able to monitor activity of a prospect on social, and you'll see that show up where it gives you an easy way to just go and reply and comment and share and like and so on. So this is where we just put a ribbon on it, put a bow on it, and bring it all together. The system is as follows. You identify who you want to reach out to. You reach out to them initially through the messaging application of the social platform that you're connecting with them on. You follow up with that initial outreach with a email followed by a phone call, and you start to pay attention to the content that they're sharing and posting, and you start liking, commenting, sharing their stuff if it's relevant, right? It doesn't make sense if they post a picture of their baby and you go and share it out. That may or may not make sense depending on where you are in your relationship. So you want to make sure that it makes sense, obviously. But you can always comment on somebody's baby and say, oh, how cute, right? No matter how distantly connected or how much you guys are strangers to each other. So there's different levels of what's acceptable in the social norm, and you want to kind of operate within those unspoken rules. So you are then commenting, liking their stuff. You're continuing to reach out through Messenger, email, and phone. And what's going to happen is that at some point, they are going to respond to you. They are going to accept your call, but it just requires persistence, and it requires thinking outside the box. It requires working around problems to come up with alternate solutions. So I hope that this was helpful for you in thinking about social in a different way and really opening up another prospective pool of people for you to establish relationships with, and ultimately can become referral sources or clients or simply, business buddies. So it's good stuff. It works. And I'd love to see what happens if you put this into motion, what your experience is with it. You can get back to me and let me know. Folks, if you've been enjoying this episode, we're here twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, and we need your help. We need you to subscribe to the show so that you get notified or shows up in your feed when a new episode comes out. And we also need reviews, ratings and reviews. So if you can go into iTunes or any of the other podcast players, the one that you use, and rate and review the show, that would be outstanding. Because what happens is people come and they want a recommendation, right? We were just talking about recommendations. They want a recommendation. They want to see that people were happy and that they're getting into a good show. They're listening to something that's worth their while. So we want to try to have as many ratings and reviews there for them to peruse and make that decision rather than taking a pass and keep on going. So, folks, we've got a great interview coming this Thursday. I'm really excited for it. In the meantime, go try this thing out. Go knock it out on social. Talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning into the Profit with Law podcast. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us, as well as helping us reach more people with this valuable content. Please leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast directory. Join us again next time when we are back with even more strategies to profit with law.